The movie begins in the near future in New York City, with the protagonist Rachel having a soothing dream in which she sees herself pregnant. The world that they live in is heavily affected by artificial intelligence. In the next few scenes, we see the extent to which technology has mixed with the daily lives of humans. They have a personal AI voice assistant.
Good morning, Rachel. Did you have a good night's sleep?
That actively sets their daily schedule, tracks their moods, and even suggests what clothes to wear.
I suggest silver fossil for today.
Meanwhile, artificial nature pods installed inside homes have negated the need for actual time spent in nature. However, Rachel's reality is quite different from her dream. She doesn't have the time to go through the hassles of pregnancy, even though she and her husband Alvy are interested in becoming parents. Alvy is a botanist, a profession which is on the brink of extinction thanks to all the technological advancements in society. Meanwhile, Rachel is a hardworking and successful employee at a leading tech company named Pegasus. She soon receives a promotion at the company for her efforts. During the promotion interview, the HR manager asks Rachel about her financial conditions. As her husband is a botanist, she's the primary breadwinner of her home. The HR manager then points out that pregnancy at this point may derail her career and prove to be economically disastrous. As an alternative, Pegasus is willing to deposit a down payment if Rachel chooses to have a baby through a company named Womb Center. Later, in Rachel's office, her AI assistant schedules a nature pod session for her during lunchtime, but she's interrupted by a phone call from the Womb Center. They inform her that she has successfully made it through the waitlist for using their revolutionary artificial womb pods. They ask her to call them back to secure her spot and arrange a tour. When she calls back, they agree on a tour of the facilities down the week. During lunchtime, Rachel enjoys her nature pod session in an artificial tree where she dreams of holding a baby by the beach. Back from her lunch break, Rachel tells her colleague Alice that she got a spot at the Womb Center. Delighted for her friend, Alice suggests they celebrate the news with a get-together at her home. But Rachel reveals that she hasn't even informed her husband about being on the waitlist for the artificial birth. After work, Rachel speaks to her AI therapist Eliza, who asks why she never told Albie she was on the waitlist. Our protagonist says it's because she's worried about her husband's reaction, since he wants a natural birth. However, Eliza then assures her that her pod baby won't be any less natural than one born inside a human uterus. We can see that Rachel isn't fully convinced by her AI therapist's answers. That evening in their apartment, Rachel is about to open the conversation with her husband, but he tells her about his day and how his students were apprehensive about interacting with nature. Eventually, the students opened up to the experience. He then adds that the world began to unravel when corporations began treating nature like a commodity, which led to people being emotionally unfulfilled. Hearing this, the wife decides to keep the news about the Womb Center a secret for now. Later that week, Rachel attends the tour by herself, where the clients watch a video of the Pegasus founder. He addresses the declining birth rate in first world countries and attributes it to pregnancy being inconvenient for women. He then talks about how the company was founded to allow women to have careers while remaining unhindered by laborious pregnancies. Following this, the director of the center, Linda, welcomes the clients by announcing that humans have control over nature. She then begins the tour of the facility and guides the visitors to the incubation room. In this futuristic world, the Womb Center has devised a scientific way of making babies inside artificial eggs called pods. Here, she shows the clients the huge artificial hard eggshell-like structure with a baby growing inside it. Furthermore, the parents can also use their phones or tablets to expose the growing embryo to different audio like music and podcasts. She also says that they can choose the types of flavors their baby feeds on, suggesting various options so the child doesn't turn out to be a picky eater. A client asks how long the pod can function when disconnected from the base. In response, the director says it can be separated for up to 48 hours, which allows the parents to take the pod when traveling. Rachel asks if the baby can hear the outside world like a natural baby can hear in the uterus. The director replies that they can and encourages them to speak to their child even when it's inside the pod. After the tour, Linda asks Rachel for a deposit to confirm her interest in the procedure. That evening in their apartment, Albie tells his wife that he got a notification about an $8,700 deposit. He asks if they should notify the bank, asking if it's a fraud alert. However, Rachel reveals that she made the payment and that her work would cover it as a part of her promotion package. Coming clean to her husband, she admits that she had put their names on the wait list of the womb center, never expecting to hear back from them. Confused, Albie expresses his disappointment that she went on the tour and agreed to grow their child inside a pod without informing him. Remorseful, she apologizes and says that she wants to have a baby with him. The two then hug each other and promise to discuss the matter further. To appease his worries, she suggests they talk to her friend Alice and her husband Ben to learn more about the experience. The next evening, Ben shows the couple how to hold the pod with a strap. Alice talks about how having the option of growing a baby in a pod allows a couple to have equal childcare responsibility. When Ben asks when they'll take the tour, Rachel lies and says they don't know. Then he asks Albie if he wants to hold the pod, but he politely declines. After they return to their apartment, the couple have an argument. Albie is still wary of the procedure and expresses his concern about the pod's plastic material. But Rachel says all that matters is that the baby thinks it's a real womb. Offended, she says that if he can carry the baby in the pod just like Ben, she knows that they could lose their spot at the womb center if they asked for more time. That night, after the couple makes love, Albie says he changed his mind and thinks they should go through with the pod. He can see how much it matters to his wife and agrees to give the process a chance. The next day, the couple meets with Linda, who asks if it's important to them that Albie is the baby's father. Confused, they ask why that's even a question. Linda explains that all they need to conceive the baby is Rachel's ovum and her skin cells, which means they won't need any DNA from a male donor. However, she points out that if they wish to have a son, they will need the Y chromosome from a male donor. Without hesitation, Rachel insists her husband to be the child's father, and they agree to let nature decide the gender of the baby. Following this, the couple nervously watches the process of Rachel's ovum getting fertilized on a huge screen while Linda narrates everything happening. After the successful insemination, the director congratulates the expecting parents, who seem to be extremely happy. Minutes later, a worker shows them the zygote inside a cryogenic tube. When they return to the apartment, the couple receives a call from Rachel's parents. During the call, her father tells Albie to think about selling his property on Shell Island, since they could use the money now that they're expecting a baby. Aware of how her husband feels about the topic, Rachel tells her father to drop the subject. Later, in the incubation room at the womb center, she asks a nurse if she could see their baby, as she can't open the eggshell's window on her own. The nurse explains that they keep the embryo in complete darkness until the first heartbeat is detected. Their conversation is interrupted when one of the pods beeps. The nurse points out that the pod is ready for delivery and reveals that the device detects special proteins and hormones in the amniotic fluid when the baby is ready to come out into the world. When Rachel asks what the stated due date is, the nurse ironically says that they can only give an estimation, as nature still decides the best time for the baby to come out. That night, Rachel dreams of having a C-section and birthing an egg instead of a baby. So she goes to her therapist, Eliza, and reveals the strange dream. The AI reminds her that dreams aren't reliable analytical material, and that their study was forsaken in the 20th century. A few weeks later, the couple listens to the baby's heartbeat for the first time at the womb center. Here, Linda informs them that they could take the pod home for 2 weeks. At 6 months of gestation, they open the tiny viewing window and stare at the developing baby for the first time. A few months later, Albie notices the baby's room that Rachel decorated and suggests placing a live plant there. However, the wife thinks it's better if he designs a hologram version instead of a live one. Offended, he walks out of the room while his wife follows him, shouting that it might be a good idea to sell the property on Shell Island since they never go there anyway. Albie argues that it's because she never wants to visit, to which she quickly replies they don't need to because the city has nature pods. Enraged, the husband insists he won't raise their child with artificial greenery. That evening, Albie sees their baby's pod in the living room, and his wife says she brought it home because it's their home period. She thinks spending time with it in their apartment might do them good. Unsure how to proceed, they carefully transfer the pod to their bedroom. However, while making love, Albie says he can't continue knowing that their child is in the room with them. He then carries it toward the nursery and almost trips and nearly drops it. This near mishap upsets his wife, but he explains that she'll have to accept that their baby will stumble and fall at some point in its life. In the following scene, they take a tour of a private school owned and run by Pegasus. Here, a man mentions that his nephew born in the womb center doesn't have dreams. So Linda says it's a side effect they're working on, but assures all the parents that it's nothing to worry about because dreams serve no evolutionary purpose. For the next few weeks, Albie secures the baby on his body using a pod carrier. He spends most of his time taking the pod all over the city while reading books aloud so the baby can hear him. One day after class, Albie's boss tells him that they've decided to slowly downsize the greenhouse because maintenance costs them too much money. He points out that they can replace the real plants with holograms, upsetting the botanist. That very evening, Albie gets emotional while watching a documentary about penguins. Suddenly, Rachel opens up the possibility of taking the pod back to the facility earlier than expected. Surprised, her husband says having it in the house has been great and refuses the proposal. That night, Rachel once again has a weird dream. She sees that the pod is no longer beside her, so she frantically searches the room. But when she stands in front of the mirror, she sees her pregnant belly. A few days later, Albie says he received a book from his mother about attachment therapy, which is a belief that spending time with a baby helps the child develop empathy. Rachel argues that the entire point of having a pod baby is detachment from the process of pregnancy. In response, he says that acknowledging different ideologies is a healthy practice. Seconds later, his wife opens up about how she isn't coping well at work and asks that they speak to the AI therapist Eliza. During the therapy session, Rachel tells the AI they're having difficulty adjusting because everything seems to revolve around the pod. She adds that her husband is gradually bonding with the child, while she isn't finding the same success. On the other hand, her husband thinks she needs more alone time with the baby, but she immediately retorts that maybe she isn't ready to be a mother yet. The therapy session ends when Eliza asks to be connected to the pod directly to take readings about the growing baby. In the next few days, Rachel carries the pod around on a carrier. However, she feels self-conscious about what people think when they see her in public. One day, she brings the pod to a work meeting at Pegasus. After the meeting is over, Alice warns her that HR might not like her bringing the pod to work, and that people might label her as a distracted mom. She then takes Rachel to a small room in the office where the others place their pods while at work. That evening, when Rachel's shift is over, she realizes that she's late for a workshop at the womb center. She hurriedly makes her way to the workshop where her husband is already waiting for her. Afterwards, the couple places their pod back in the incubation room, and Rachel says she wishes they could spend more time with it. For the next few days, the couple feels increasingly lonely due to the pod's absence. Rachel continues having dreams of holding a baby while walking on a beach. When she wakes up the following day, she heads to the apartment greenhouse, takes a plant, and places it in the nursery. However, things begin to take a turn for the worse for Rachel at her work. The HR director inquires about her decreased productivity at work and asks if she's suffering mentally. Rachel denies this subtle accusation of having depression and brushes away the concern. Soon afterwards, the couple meets with Linda, who asks them their preferred date for the induced birth. Taken aback by this question, they wonder why is the question of induced birth being asked so soon. In response, the director explains that the company's policy has changed, as the pods are in high demand, which means they need to be induced at 39 weeks. When Rachel asks if they can keep the pod at home until it's ready for birth, Linda reminds them that doing so is forbidden as per the fine print of the signed contract. As the couple exits the building, Albie tells his wife to wait for him outside while he returns to the nursery and steals their pod. That night, after waking from a dream where she takes a baby home from a supermarket, Rachel enthusiastically tells her husband that they should go to Shell Island and have the baby there. When Albie asks why she changed her mind, she says she doesn't want their child's first moments to be in the womb center. Following this, Albie speaks to Linda and explains that his wife is in a bonding phase with the baby. However, the director reminds him that the pod should have stayed in the facility in the first place. Albie argues that the baby is under their jurisdiction, but Linda reminds him that the pod is the womb center's property. Exasperated, he admits that he and his wife are considering a home birth. Linda reveals they'll need a self-generated birth code to open the vessel, and she advises against their plan. However, the couple pushes through with their decision to head to Shell Island. For the last days of gestation, they spend time with their pod in the peaceful cabin near the beach. One night, Rachel notices that the pod's base isn't turning on. Albie realizes that the womb center must have remotely disconnected their access to the facility. So, to calm his worried wife, he reminds her that the pod can stay alive for 48 hours even after being disconnected from the facility. He then adds that they must trust that the baby is ready for birth before the 48 hours are over. Fortunately, the next day, the pod alerts them that the baby is ready to come out to the world. Rachel tries to enter the baby's conception date as the birth code, but it doesn't work. Panicked, Albie says he'll break the device open with mechanical tools. He removes the screw top, but the opening is still too small for the infant, so he pries the two halves open with sheer force. Rachel then wraps their child up in a towel, and the couple stares lovingly at their offspring. In the final scene of the movie, Rachel packs the empty pod in a box and bikes to town. There, she drops it off at the post office before heading back to their cabin. She lies down next to her child and husband peacefully.